So we're going to talk
So
about
Loki.
Loki. Yeah, the first episode came out. This is going to come out every Wednesday, which I actually like that timing. It's going to be fun to see. Like every Wednesday feels like something like a unique time to watch it. So instead of like on the
Right.
weekend. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was skeptical about this show. Like I didn't understand why Marvel was making a show around this character, but I understand now that the actor, what's his name, Tom Hiddleston. I was going to say Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston is so good that you can base an entire character like Loki around him, and it's going to work. And so, like, yeah, this Loki series is going to be fantastic. And I'm also very interested in what the series is setting up long term for the MCU. Like it's actually opening up a whole different door. And when you really start thinking about it, it makes logical sense that they're going to open this door with Loki, and then it's going to trickle down throughout the Marvel universe, and it's going to affect all the rest of the movies, all the other series. It's pivotal. It's actually pretty pivotal, because of all the different concepts and ideas that's opening up. It's actually really good.
The first thing that I noticed when I started watching it was just the theme music for it that plays over the titles. They use theremin in the theme music. You don't really hear a whole lot of theremin in TV and movies,
Well,
but
so
usually it's
explain theremin for people who don't know what that is. I have no idea.
theremin's a very weird instrument that you just control with your hands, like moving them in space around the instrument, and it makes these sounds. Theremin means one of two things. It either means something spooky is going to happen, or something spacey is going to happen. So hearing theremin's like, okay, yeah, this is really going to be about space. And I think that like Marvel's been talking about the new Marvel movies being more oriented around space. Is that right?
Well, yeah, man. Like, so moving forward, the Marvels when it comes out, it's going to be Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, and so another Marvel character. I don't know, another person with Marvel in the title. That's going to be in
Yeah.
space. There's going to be a Secret Invasion, I think, series. It's going to be based on the Skrulls, which is going to be in space. The new Thor movie, Thunder and Love and Thunder, is going to be in space, Guardian Galaxy. So like I said before, they're opening a new door, and I'm curious to see how the public reacts to it, because this stuff that they're going to start doing is very, I would say, not insignificant in the comics, but it's not. They haven't covered a lot of ground. And I think I understand what the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the producers and the writers want to do. They want to take things that are not very significant in the comics and then make them significant in the movies and TV shows. Because if there's not a lot of history and there's not a lot of stuff tied to it in the comics, then they're free to do what they want. And now, of course, they can do what they want anyway. But like stuff like the time variant, I forget the name of it already.
TVA, I think it's Time Variance
the Time
Authority.
Variance Authority. That is a very, very nuanced, small thing in the Marvel comics, and they're taking it and making it huge. And so by doing that, by looking at these little, like the Timekeepers, very small thing in the comics, making them huge. By doing that, they can play with it and do what they want with it, and I think it's smart. I think it's pretty genius with it what they're working on now. Because like they're going to sell Time Variance T-shirts, Time Variance Story T-shirts, like a lot of characters that you saw in the episode are going to become famous and interesting. And these people are insignificant in the comics, so it's really interesting how they're taking these small things that, like Loki the character himself, no one cares about in the comics, and now he's huge. So it's really cool how the Marvel Cinematic Universe is taking very nuanced, small things that nobody cares about in the comics and making them big. And they also are taking things that are big in the comics and not doing anything with them. So it's kind of funny how they're doing it. But yeah, we should start going and tackling your questions, I think.
Yeah. Let's start off with the so like early on in the episode, they show Loki being apprehended by Thor, Iron Man, all those guys, the Avengers. Some of those scenes are in the first Avengers movie at the very end of it. But the scene where they're in the lobby of a building. I swear I've seen that before.
Yeah, you saw it in Avengers Endgame.
In Avengers Endgame. Okay, all right. So that's where I saw it.
Yep.
Who is trying to intercept the Tesseract in that lobby? Is it just generic government people, or
you saw Avengers Endgame, right?
I did, but I don't. So like I don't remember all these details just because I don't have the comic book background.
Okay, so like Avengers,
so if something's very like kind of under the radar or casually mentioned, I don't tie that to anything else.
Yeah.
It's just something that happened in the movie.
Well, in Avengers Endgame, the Avengers in 2019, they create a time machine and go back to 2012 to steal the Tesseract and the other Infinity Gems, so they can bring them back to their present and reassemble them, and then unsnap everything and bring everybody back. And so Tony Stark and Ant-Man were in charge of getting the Tesseract. So Tony Stark and Ant-Man from the future come back, and they do a weird thing where Ant-Man goes into the past Tony Stark's chess piece and causes him to have a heart attack, making a distraction. And then Tony Stark from the future grabs the Tesseract in that silver case and walks. And
that's who the guy was.
Yes, it was Tony Stark. And then the Hulk busts through, knocks him down. The Tesseract comes out the case. Loki sees it, picks it up, and then disappears. So it was actually
that's new from this timeline in this show, right? That didn't happen in Endgame.
Yes, it definitely happened in Endgame. It was a big point of Endgame because in Endgame he grabs it in the movie and disappears, and everybody says, "Well, Loki's not dead anymore." Because if you watch Avengers Infinity War at the very beginning, Thanos kills Loki, right? And they kind of go over that in the show. But then in Avengers Endgame, Loki from the original Avengers movie grabs the Tesseract and disappears. So all of a sudden, everybody knows that we're going to see Loki again, and we do in the series. So
I never thought Loki was dead.
Yeah, and so
he's too much of a trickster for that.
Exactly. So in the show, Loki says, "Hey, the Avengers created the time variance. They time traveled. They screwed up time." And then the woman, the judge, who is in the comics, by the way, we'll talk about her. She tells Loki, "The Avengers did what they're supposed to do. You didn't. You weren't supposed to grab the Tesseract and disappear. You created a variance when you did that." So apparently, the show talks about this timeline, like the sacred timeline, the timeline that is being guarded by the Time Variance Authority and the Timekeepers, like this one timeline. And they talked about timelines in Avengers Endgame, where the Chosen One, I think that's her name, told Hulk, "Hey, if you take this stone, you will create alternate timelines." And the Hulk says, "We'll come back and fix those timelines." And that's what Captain America did at the end of Endgame. This actually brings up a lot of problems not a lot of problems, but they have questions to answer, and hopefully they will. Captain America at the end of Endgame was supposed to take the Infinity Stones and take them back to where they stole them from the past. And he was going to fix all these timelines. Now, why would Captain America do that if the Time Variance Authority's job is to fix these timelines?
Does he know about them?
No. Captain America doesn't know about the Time Variance Authority at all. He could. Who knows? Maybe he learned about him on his time travels. We don't know. But here's the key point. At some point, the show is going to have to address that. They're going to have to address that Captain America killed those alternate timelines. It's going to be something interesting that the shows will address at some point. I don't know when. But to answer your question, all that stuff happened in Endgame.
Okay. And so who was trying to intercept it? It's the government? They meet some people in the Tesseract. So they come down into the lobby. The Avengers are walking out with the Tesseract.
Oh, those guys were from S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, those were S.H.I.E.L.D.
From S.H.I.E.L.D., okay. So like with your help in these podcasts, I'm actually able to do a better job of threading how something from one movie plays in the others.
Oh, cool.
Where I was definitely not able to do that with my, original watches of these, because I just didn't have all this background information that we're getting now.
Oh, cool, good, great.
Yeah. All right. So in the past, we've seen the Tesseract. It's super powerful.
Yep.
If you touch it, it's going to mess you up.
Yeah, relatively. Yeah.
But in this like I think it didn't it. I thought it killed somebody in Captain America.
In Captain America, the original Captain America, the Red Skull grabbed it and it sent him out into space, right? And so yes, I mean, if you look at Captain America and you look at the other movies, like I think in Avengers, Nick Fury grabs the Tesseract real quick and puts it in a case and it burns his hands. There is some logical issues here, but there's a couple things that helps with this. First, Loki is a sort of, I want to say, an advanced being. His skin is stronger. He's more powerful.
He's a god.
Yeah, I don't want to say that term because he's technically not a god, but he's a god. So when he grabs the Tesseract, it's not going to hurt his fingers like it would mortals. And also, too, the Time Variance Authority have already established that stuff doesn't really work on them. So when when Loki goes to Mongolia and the Time Variance Authority shows up and captures him, one of the agents grabs it and just walks off with it, and she doesn't seem to care about it at all. And then later we see that the Tesseract and a whole bunch of Infinity Gems are just in a little cart, like being like, "Oh, we use these as paperweight." So it's like the rules of the Marvel universe that we're used to are going to be screwed a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see all that.
Yeah, they've got duplicates of the Infinity Gems. They've got multiple of like several of them.
Yeah, it makes sense because it's like they deal with variations of reality. So whenever a new universe comes up, I'm sure that those Infinity Gems have caused problems throughout throughout their timeline. So they just keep picking them up. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, but do wait for that. Like that's like. I want you to understand that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, after Endgame, the original Infinity Gems are gone. There are no Infinity Gems, right? But now we know that there's a place full of Infinity Gems. So if you're Marvel and you're thinking about how we could bring the Infinity Gems back or something cool like the Tesseract back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is the perfect place to do it.
Right. So my leaping off question was, why can the TVA hold the Tesseract? And I guess it really, now that you talk about it and I think about it, it kind of makes sense because space magic doesn't really work with the TVA. So, Loki's powers don't work while he's there. Mm-hmm. I guess they can hold the Tesseract and it's just no problem for them.
Yeah, like the rules are broke. So it's actually interesting. The Time Variance Authority, their base is in a place called Null Time Zone. NULTIME. Well, time. So Null Time Zone. It's a place outside of regular time and space. So you're going to hear more about that later. They'll probably talk about the Null Time Zone at some point.
All right. So you said the TVA is not very significant in comics.
No. In fact,
go ahead.
I had to do some research because I kind of felt like it could have been. And when I did some research, I figured out it came out in 1976, I think. Let me make sure. Drum roll, please. The first mention of the Time Variance Authority was in Thor number 371, 1986.
Okay. Yeah.
So a long time ago. Time ago.
Is there anything you can give us, like other background on the TVA?
Okay, I can tell you a couple different things. So this is going to get into the weeds. The Timekeepers in the show, the Timekeepers create the Time Variance Authority to monitor the sacred timeline. In the comics, the Timekeepers did not create a Time Variance Authority. They're separate. They have nothing to do with each other. So keep that in mind. And also, too, you remember the judge that was working with Loki? That was going to sentence him. Remember her?
Right. Yes.
Her name is Ravonna Renslayer. Ravonna Renslayer. She is going to be in the series, and she's going to do something special at some point, I'm pretty much sure. Because in the comics, she is a romantic interest of Kang the Conqueror. So let me ask you this. Do you want me to explain the Timekeepers, Immortus, Kang the Conqueror stuff now? Do you want me to wait? It's up to you because it's a whole bunch of stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the timekeepers, I guess, just because they come up in this show.
All right. So, okay,
what can you tell us about them? The timekeepers are the three beings that created the TVA.
Yes, originally I thought, like in the trailers, originally they showed three faces, and originally I thought this would be the High Tribunal because they had three faces, but it ended up being the Timekeepers, which I'm fine with. The Timekeepers existed like in a different universe at the end of time, and they realized that they needed to keep time or fix time, so they created or they just kind of on their own fixed time, and they became these people who would watch time and make sure that time would stay on the proper path. At some point, the timekeepers were actually there was a different set of three people called the time twisters. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me completely, but in the story, these people called the time twisters were like evil time people. And they did the same thing as the timekeepers, but at some point something happened to the time twisters and the timekeepers killed them off or changed them or something. The point is, if you're watching Loki, keep in mind that there might be evil characters called the time twisters at some point that might show up. Anyway, the timekeepers in the comics started working with a guy named Immortus. Immortus's job was to make sure that mistakes throughout the Marvel Universe's timeline would be fixed, or to make sure that the timeline was sacred. So there's two things I want you to keep in mind here when it comes to Immortus in the comics. First, you remember last time we talked how the original Human Torch was actually an android? Remember when we talked about that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why we talked about that, but it came up in our conversation. The Immortus
he showed up in the museum.
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so now this is going to blow your mind, and this is going to be why this show is so important. In the comics, Immortus realized that the Scarlet Witch would give birth to super powerful children. He didn't want that to happen because it would mess up the timeline. So Immortus, so the timekeepers originally told him to kill her. He didn't. Now this is going to blow your brain apart. Immortus took the original Human Torch's android body and created time duplicate clones. So he made it so the original Human Torch would exist in the same timeline as another clone of him. Then Ultron in the comics stole that time clone. He didn't know it was a time clone, but he stole it and created the Vision. The reason why Immortus created that is so the Vision could exist, so the Scarlet Witch would fall in love with the Vision, so she couldn't have children.
Okay.
So if we're talking about shows that are interconnected and shows that are opening up new doors, Immortus is going to show up in this series at some point. And we already know that the Scarlet Witch's children are alive somewhere, and she's probably going to look for them in an alternate universe, which is going to be this Doctor Strange and the Multiverse, which is we know that's coming out. So we already know that there's going to be connections and stuff that in this Loki series tied to WandaVision and tied to the upcoming Doctor Strange movie. So that's just like when I was watching that, that's just, and this is all from a series, a comic series called Avengers Forever. I'm going to send you the link. You will hear a lot of people talk more about Avengers Forever because the Timekeepers were a big part of that series. And there's not a lot of comic stories around the Timekeepers except for Avengers Forever. And Avengers Forever has storylines where it has multiple universes. It has different kind of space guys. It has different Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. It was made in 1998. It's a super interesting comic. And I think that Avengers Forever is going to be the template for most, if not all, of our comic stories moving forward. It almost feels like they took Avengers Forever and started picking pieces apart from it to start making the next series of Marvel stuff. I'm super excited about this connection between Loki, the Timekeepers, Immortus, and Wandavision. I'm super excited to see how that works out.
So this is exactly why we're doing this podcast. There's no way I would have made any of those connections.
Now, I'm not saying that the show is going to do this, but why wouldn't they? Like, it seems absurd that they wouldn't do that, right? Like, it makes complete sense that Immortus would be the one trying to stop Scarlet Witch from having children. It just makes sense. And I don't, judging by what we watched,
if they're not going to do anything with it, why would these be their first two big budget TV series?
No, and if you look thematically, WandaVision and Loki, as far as production values and writing skills, they seem so connected. They seem so connected. Like WandaVision and Loki, they feel the same. Versus Falcon and Winter Soldier, which didn't really. That show didn't feel the same. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It just seems like that Loki and WandaVision, those two series, are working on a different level. And I've already seen interviews where they said that Loki is going to be very important for the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward. And I mean, we've got the Timekeepers, we've got Immortus. And I'm going to blow your brain again. Immortus has a villain, like someone like a antagonist that he fights. His name is Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is going to be in Ant-Man 3. We know that for sure. Like Ant-Man 3 is going to be a time travel movie. So we know that Kang the Conqueror is going to show up. We know that Immortus works for the Timekeepers. Timekeepers is in Loki. So it's all making sense. And Kang the Conqueror is a past version of Immortus. It gets really weird. And Kang the Conqueror, guess what? His ancestors are Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four.
That's crazy.
So, dude, it all is so crazy. Like, if you're the Marvel Cinematic Universe and you're the producers, you've already got this. They've already got this planned out. They already know all this how it's going to work.
Right.
Like, they already planned it out. They storyboarded it. They have a guy in a room somewhere with us all listed out. This is probably going to take 10 years to completely flesh out, but here's the beginning of it, and we're right in the center.
Yeah, they've got one of those boards up on the wall with a red string connecting all these pieces together.
You kind of have to. It's really confusing.
Right.
I mean, but and again, Kang the Conqueror is a pretty big person in Marvel Cinematic in the Marvel comics. But I mean, Immortus isn't. The Timekeepers isn't. Like, that kind of stuff nobody cares about. So again, they're doing some really interesting stuff with the way that they're using the different properties. Like the guys who are running, the producers and the people who run this are looking for stuff that they don't have to worry about all the history of that much, and kind of playing with it. And I like it.
Right. All right. This is a question you might not really have an answer for, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The TVA,
let's try.
They're in space. They're in, what did you call it? Null?
The null time.
Okay.
Null time zone. The null time zone. Yeah.
They're all Earthlings, though. Or
no, they're not.
They look like Earthlings.
I'm not going to say what they are.
Okay.
Because I read some stuff about it, and I know what they are, and I don't want to ruin it because I think this is actually be fun for you and the readers. I could be wrong.
Listeners.
Yeah, listen.
You're used to writing stuff.
Yeah, right. I am. I'm not going to say what they are because it's going to be a plot point at some point, I'm pretty sure. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I could be wrong, but if I am right, it'll ruin the experience for everybody. And if I'm wrong, then I'll sound stupid. So I'm just going to shut up.
Right, okay.
Because remember that guy says, "What's a fish?" Remember that? What's a fish?
Yeah, right.
You know, so like that's going to play into things later. You'll see that later.
Okay. What about that smiling robot? Is it significant, or is that just something fun they put in? The smiling yellow
something
robot.
Fun they put in.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, like, Disney's going to make stuff like a smiling like that robot, so they can sell little toys of that robot. You know,
that's a good point.
So like, no, it's nothing. Right. Yeah, it's not. There's a lot of cute things in that first episode that it has nothing to do with the comics, but it's really fun. And the show's super fun. I really enjoyed watching.
All right, here's another cute, fun thing. Miss Minute. Is any significance to that? Miss Minute was the voice in that animated.
I don't want to look it up right now, but I don't remember anything from the comics from that.
I will say, at least to Disney and Marvel's eye, that was significant enough for them to pay for a hashtag. So,
Miss Minute.
Yeah, if it's not from the comics, then it's significant to them because they're going to do some merchandising or something around it. So
yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I'm looking some stuff up now. It looks like it's from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I don't see anything else from the actual old school Marvel stuff. But I'll probably be wrong. We'll see.
All right, I think it's Miss Minute that tells us about this in Loki. So we learned that there was a multiversal war, and the Timekeepers kind of helped tie all that up in the war and get back to the sacred timeline. What can you tell us about the multiversal war?
In the comics, there's been a lot of stuff about different kind of time wars and stuff like that. In the comics, we never really get a sense of this. In Avengers Forever, real quick, and this is real quick. In Avengers Forever, there's a character we talked about before called Rick Jones. Remember me talking about Rick Jones?
Yes, yeah, Rick Jones.
Please tell me you remember that.
Yeah, you said he's very important in the comics, but not the MCU.
Yeah, because exactly. So back in the day, there was a Kree Skull War. Rick Jones was involved, and he ended the Kree Skull War by unleashing something called the Destiny Force. It was this super ability that all humans have, but we haven't unleashed yet. So at some point, all humans will have the ability to manipulate time and space. That scares the Timekeepers, and so Avengers Forever, Immortus' job is to make sure that human beings never get that powerful. And in Avengers Forever, the Avengers become bad guys, and they become like a warrior race. Like the entire all of Earth becomes a warrior race. They spread across the galaxy and just dominate and kill anyone who doesn't follow their lead. And so in Avengers Forever, their job is to make sure that the Avengers never become powerful, and Immortus does everything to stop them. So with Rick Jones, I totally forgot your question.
Multiversal war. Multiversal war. What?
Oh, okay. So in Avengers Forever, Rick Jones uses his ability to bring different Avengers from time and space, different timelines, different space lines to. I don't know if space lines is the actual thing, but we just made something new today. He brings them together to fight the Timekeepers. Yeah, so all that happens. So in the comics, there's definitely different interstellar wars, and there's definitely battles and warfare between timelines. But the multiversal war, I don't remember from the Marvel comics. I don't think that ever happened. I think it's a cool idea. I think it was an awesome idea. I like it. But I didn't see the comic roots there. I have to do some more digging, but I didn't see anything like that.
Okay. What about the sacred timeline?
The sacred timeline is definitely in the comics. Like the Timekeepers or other people like the Timekeepers have always tried to make it so the timeline doesn't shift. And this is kind of important. This is a technical thing. If you're writing comic books, you have hundreds of people working on different things. Mm-hmm. So if you have a person writing Spider-Man in like 20 years ago, he might have wrote something that doesn't make sense to something that was written today or written 10 years ago.
Right.
So there are people at work at the comic industries to make sure that they categorize everything that people are writing so the storylines and plot lines make sense. But a lot of times that stuff doesn't happen. Like, for example, in DC Comics, Superman flew into Earth, like, and he got parents, but then he got his superpowers when he was a kid. He became Superboy and all this other stuff. But there's another Superman story where Superman landed and didn't get his powers till he's an adult. Both those stories exist in the same comic book universe. So that doesn't make any sense. So DC Comics fixed that problem by creating the Crisis on Infinite Earth. So DC Comics realized that they had all kinds of different storylines, all kinds of different stuff going on. None of it makes sense. And they pretty much destroyed all of it and made one central timeline. Now, DC Comics is a mess because they do this all the time. They've actually destroyed their universe, I think, 3 times in the last 10 years, which is insane. They just like wipe it clean and start over. Marvel doesn't do that very often. I think they just did it recently, but Marvel doesn't like to do that. Instead, they'll write stories where people go back and fix things. And so that's kind of what Avengers Forever did. It was a comic series that kind of fixed a lot of these small problems. But every once in a while they have to do that. And so you'll see more and more of that in the comic book. And you know what, Mike? I forgot your question again. What the heck?
You were talking about the sacred timeline. Before you continue,
no, but
that just, to me, it sounds like this whole idea came from Marvel itself. So, like Marvel, their writers, this is probably a term that they used all the time internally, talking about their own sacred timeline that they needed to maintain. And then eventually that idea leapt into the comics. And now they created they created this whole apparatus around them having to manage this internally.
Well, there's a lot of interesting meta fiction happening right here. The sacred timeline is definitely something that people talk about as far as fans and writers do. Mm-hmm. But also, there's a really interesting place. And I want to say one thing. I know I say the word interesting a lot. I'm trying to find new words. There's a really cool place where Loki is sitting down. It was after he tried to escape, and then he watched his life video and realized he was going to die in the last timelines, where Loki says, "I'm a villain. That's why I do things. I'm a villain." Like, the whole discussion with Mobius was talking about predetermination, predestination. Like, do we have free will and those other things? And Loki's saying, "I don't have free will. I'm a villain. That's my role," right? Mm. And so, if you look at the comics, the reason why Loki does stuff in the comics is because he's a bad guy. That's what bad guys do. And I like the idea that Marvel, the cinematic Marvel universe, is going to look at that idea of why do villains in comics do their bad things. And I like the idea that they're trying to make Loki more three-dimensional, fleshed out first character. And I hope they do this with all their characters. So it's gonna be super fun to watch them take this idea that we're taking an archetype character, Loki, who's just a villain, and making him more of a person. Like, it was cool when Mobius says the only reason you exist is to give people better than you opportunities to rise. Right. And they showed that scene. Like, the only reason Loki exists is so the Avengers can gather together and fight you, Mm-hmm. And then Loki's like, who am I? Like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And there's different ideas in comic books and in creative writing in general. There's a theme called the censor of narrative gravity, which says that you don't have free will. Everything that you do is copied from things that you want to be. So at some point, as a black man, I saw another black man wearing glasses and writing, and I said, I want to be that. And I began to copy him and do what he does so I can be what he is. And so, like, these writers are really, really smart, and they're doing some really high level crafting when it comes to story ideas, meta fiction. It's not high end to the point where people are going to be confused. But if you're a fan of fiction, if you've studied this stuff like I have, it's my job as a creative writing professor. I'm super impressed. Like, these guys, like, this is the kind of stuff that we teach our students in class. Like, think outside the box. Try to do something different. Like, you see how people do other stuff. Try to look at things a different way. Don't just use tropes. And the writers are taking tropes and playing with them and trying to figure out different ways around them. And it's super fun, and I respect it. And it also makes me kind of depressed about Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think it was a pretty good series, but compared to Loki, you can't hold a candle to it. Not at all.
Okay. Well, I think that's enough about Sacred Timeline, unless there's anything else that you really want to say about it.
Nope.
All right.
Not really.
All right. Next up, the elevator button labels. So those were...
I didn't know.
Okay. There was like a camera shot that was pretty, focused on the elevator button labels. I didn't know if they stood out to you at all. They're not normal. The floors are labeled. I've got 3 samples here. One floor is FE3, another floor is GYE, and then another is 2W1. Nothing about that jumps out.
No, but I'll have to do some looking. I'm sure someone on Reddit or somewhere has already figured all that stuff out, but they're probably going to show up later. I mean, if there's an elevator with buttons, at some point Loki's going to get in there and try pushing those buttons. So we'll see that later, I guess.
Either they just wanted to show how weird this place is, that the floors aren't 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., or
probably a little bit of both.
It might come and play later on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you know about Agent Mobius?
Agent Mobius is from the comics. He's kind of again insignificant. But he was part of the Time Variance Authority at some point. He left them at some point, and he did a couple different things. But man, he is like so under the radar. He came up in Fantastic Four number 353 in June 1991. So again, we get a character from Fantastic Four, which means that at some point the Fantastic Four is definitely going to show up.
Didn't they show a logo for a Fantastic Four movie recently?
They showed the logo so they kind of previewed all the rest of the movies that's coming up, and at the end of the preview, they showed the Fantastic Four logo, but they didn't say anything else. This is all going to lead to Fantastic Four. So listen to this. So there's a storyline where the She-Hulk's involved. I'm going to read this. This is from the Marvel fandom. When She-Hulk was put on trial by the TVA for attempting to warn a time-displaced version of Hawkeye of his looming death, Mr. Mobius was one of the preceding judges, and he was also the only judge to survive when chaos broke out after the villain Clockwise hijacked the trial and went on a rampage blasting the radioactive cannon. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that there's going to be a She-Hulk series. So there might be some interesting things working with Agent Mobius and She-Hulk. But we have to just wait.
Okay. All right. So in earlier episodes, we talked about which one was this? This was the Avengers, I guess. We talk about the guy in space talking to Thanos. We can never really identify who or what he was.
He's not from the comics.
Yeah, so we just always called him a lizard guy or something like that.
Yeah.
In space. In this episode, Loki talks about space lizards. I think they've been listening to our podcast and they put it in the episode.
Yeah. So they listened to our podcast and they went back in time a year when they started production of the show. Yeah. And then that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I just thought it was interesting that he talked about space lizards. We've been talking about that too.
Talking about space lizards. Yeah.
I think he was talking about the timekeepers, though.
Yeah, they look like space. They actually are space lizards. There's a picture of them I saw where one of them has like tentacles and stuff, so they are like lizard-like. I also thought it was funny. You sent me that little article about how Quentin Tarantino's movies kind of like were inspiration for the series. I don't see that. I haven't seen any Quentin Tarantino like stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be on you're going to be looking for it.
Yeah, I'll definitely be looking for it. I've seen some of that stuff in earlier Marvel movies, but I didn't see anything in this first Loki episode other than maybe just the amount of dialogue in it. You know?
Yeah, it was,
yeah. But I definitely got my eye out.
I know you're a fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of space lizards, are the timekeepers related to any of the people that we know are going to be in the Eternals? Is it possible the timekeepers will show up in the Eternals?
I highly doubt it. They don't have any real connections, but who knows? They might. Right now, Loki's stuff is connected pretty strongly to a lot of the Avengers stuff. And the Eternals stuff, like with the Eternals movie coming out, is so separate. Like the Celestials and the Timekeeper stuff, I don't ever see that connection, but they might make some kind of connection that could be interesting, but I don't see it.
Okay. All right. My next note.
It actually makes me worried about, real quick, it actually makes me worry about the Eternals. If the Eternals aren't connected to all this stuff, I'm really worried about that movie.
Yeah.
I'm worried that it won't be as successful as they want.
Knowing Marvel, right now, it's got to be connected in some way. They wouldn't. Well,
people go see these movies. Yeah, but people go see these movies because it's a connection. Like every movie connects to another movie, and like if Eternals is outside of these connections, if like all the stuff they're doing right now with time and space, I mean, yes, the Eternals are from space, but if they don't have a connection with the Infinity Gems, if they don't have a connection to time travel, if they don't have a connection to the powers dynamics of the previous movies, I don't see why I should go watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that a lot of other people will feel the same way. So we'll just have to wait.
Yeah. So I like Ant-Man a lot, right?
Yeah. Ant-Man's gonna be a big part of this.
The reason I like Ant-Man, at least I think so, is it was written by Edgar Wright, and it was going to be directed by Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright's one of my favorite directors. He's the guy that did Shaun of the Dead and a bunch of other really awesome movies. And I just love his style. I love his writing style. I love his directing style. And I think there's still a lot of his style left in Ant-Man. He left that movie after having written the script due to creative differences with Marvel. And what Marvel wanted to do is they wanted to connect the Ant-Man movie more to the rest of the cinematic universe. And Edgar Wright wanted it to be more standalone. And I think it was probably like adding in the Falcon to Ant-Man that he didn't really, he didn't want to add other characters in when it didn't really serve the story. So that they were willing to sever relationships with a director over connecting a movie. So I don't think there's any way the Eternals is going to happen without having connections to the rest of the cinematic universe.
You make a really good point. You make a good point. So we'll just have to wait and see. You make a good point for that.
All right.
Okay. What else you got?
Maybe you'll know why I put this down in my notes. I don't remember right now. Green Gem from Casey. It's Casey.
What was that reference? Green Gem. What's that reference from?
This must be
Was they in the show?
This must be it's in the show. It must be an autocorrect. I don't know.
Oh, Casey was that agent. That he talked to. That what's a fish? Loki's like, what's your name? He says, my name's Casey. Remember that? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So your note has something about green gem from Casey.
Yeah.
Did he pick up a green gem?
I think Loki picked one up, and I'm kind of wondering if he pocketed it during that scene.
He might have. I know he picked up a yellow gem.
He's and
that was the Mind Gem. No. He picked up a green gem, and the green gem is the Time Gem. He might have picked it up. If he picked up the Time Gem, then he could. And if he leaves the Time Variance Authority's area, the Null Time Zone, and he has it in his pocket, he can use it when he leaves.
Yeah.
So if he gets out of wherever he is and he's in the regular universe and he has the Time Gem, he'll be able to manipulate time when he's out.
Right.
So yeah, it's Loki. He definitely picked up a couple gems. He probably has one of each gem in his pocket, and he has the Tesseract, 100%.
What color is the Mind Gem?
Mind Gem's yellow. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Time Gem's yellow. The Time Gem's green. The Mind Gem's yellow. The Reality Gem's red. The Space Gem's blue. I forget the other
Soul
gems.
Gem.
Soul Gem's red is like orange.
In what was it? I guess it was Captain America. You said it didn't make sense that Thanos would have given Loki one of the gems.
No,
because he needed it.
It still doesn't make sense.
Maybe this is where Loki got that gem.
No. Well, no. Maybe they might retcon it, but no. I just think that when they made Avengers, they didn't know what they wanted.
Well,
to do,
I'm not saying they. I don't think they. Maybe this is an answer for that question. Not did they plan this far ahead? I don't think they did that, but I think maybe this is an answer to that. Where they could have retconned it.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
They could. I mean, they can do anything they want now. Since they have established time travel and multiple universes, they can do whatever they want, and that's the fun thing. They can. If you want Miles Morales in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, fine, here he is. If you want a new Captain, if you want Captain America, but Chris Evans doesn't want to play him anymore, here's a new Captain America from a different universe. There you go. They can do whatever they want, so that's gonna be fun.
They shouldn't do that though. Don't replace.
No, absolutely not. The real Captain America is Sam Wilson right now.
Right.
That's fun.
Steve Rogers is Chris Evans. End of story.
Yeah.
All right. So we find out that the reason that Agent Mobius is interested in Loki, who he says is a real pussycat of a suspect, is because Agent Mobius he's after a very, very dangerous variant. And that very, very dangerous variant is Loki.
Yep.
Is there a reason that Loki would kill the TVA other than what they're kind of doing to him in this first episode? Is there anything like that from the comics that we should know about?
So, no. So, there's not going to be a lot. This first episode brought up a lot of cool stuff. But again, remember, Loki in the comics, Loki in the comics has been dead since 2010. So keep that in mind. And also, too, like Loki never was anything to worry about ever for anybody in the Marvel in the regular Marvel comics. Mm-hmm. And like nobody really cared. So this is all brand new material.
So he never had it out for the TVA in the comics.
No. But this is really interesting. I gotta stop saying interest. In the TVA in the Loki episode 1, they have these little containers that blow up and destroy alternate timelines. Did you get a glimpse? Did you get that idea? Did you understand that?
Yeah, it's almost like a grenade, and it resets the branch. And basically, it prunes that branch off of the timeline. So there's the sacred timeline. There's no branches off of it.
Yeah, but if you really think about it, they're actually killing trillions of people every time they do that. Every time they do that, they're killing trillions of people.
Right.
And so I think the show is going to try to make. First of all, I think that's Loki, but don't expect it to look like the Loki that you know. Like it's not. He might not look like Tom Hiddleston, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
Second, I think the show is going to make it so this villain who's fighting the TVA isn't a villain. Like morally, it's wrong to kill trillions of people just because of you want a perfect timeline. Mm-hmm. Like every alternate timeline deserves to exist, and the fact that they're pruning them or killing them is going to be a problem. And okay, at some point at the end of the series, we're going to have multiple universes. So the TVA is either going to allow that to happen or they won't exist. So it's all playing out to the end. Or at the end of the series, we're going to have a lot of different universes going around. So keep that. So just kind of think about that. But I like what they did at the end, and I kind of foresee what they're going to do moving forward with it. Mm-hmm. But here's one big thing. There's a character from the Marvel comics that hasn't made his way into the MCU yet. Do you remember that in France? Do you remember that kid and Mobius says, who did this? And the kid pointed to the devil on the picture. Remember that?
Yep.
Mephisto is a big character for the stuff that we're talking about right now. Like Mephisto was a lackey to Thanos. Mephisto is a villain to Doctor Strange. I wouldn't be surprised if Mephisto is a part of this somehow. Because why would the kid point to the devil and say that's Loki, and when Loki doesn't look that way?
I thought that the reason that happened is because Loki has that Nordic headdress with the horns on it.
Yeah, that could be. Well, it could be something else going on. So we didn't get to see Loki's the variant Loki's face at the end, and he did kill those guys using fire. And Mephisto is the Marvel Comics version of the devil. So it's kind of interesting. We'll have to wait and see. But don't be surprised if you see some Mephisto action. If that does come out, I'll have to explain who Mephisto is, which is going to be a whole thing.
Okay. I think you've already answered my last question, really, which is where do you think this is going?
Yeah, for right now, I think that the show has no problem creating head fakes. Like the Marvel Comics has no problem with head fakes, and I think the TV show won't have a problem with a head fake. I think that right now, the Timekeepers were always considered villains in the comics. So keep that in mind. Timekeepers were not good people. So The Timekeepers are probably going to be villains in the comics. In the series, and I can see a place where Loki, either the Time Variant Loki or Loki, the character we like, is going to create some kind of situation where multiple universes exist. Because remember, he can't go back. He asked that. He's like, Loki says, "I can't go back." Like, if Loki can't go back, then he's going to try to figure out a way to go back. Like, he's going to try and make it so he can go back. And that means that the whole idea of multiple universes has to exist. So just keep that in mind. That's probably where the series is going to go. Because Tom Hiddleston isn't just going to quit being Loki. Like at some point, like the show's setting it up. So they kill Loki in Avengers Endgame. They're setting it up so that he's going to return. Like he's going to come back. So we'll just see. We have to just wait and see.
Okay, cool.
But that's it. That's it. Really, I don't have any other things. I mean, yeah, that's it. We covered everything, 100%. And again, it's 52 minutes long. So I don't think the other follow-up Loki episodes will be this long. But if they are, I'm super excited. Like I hope they bring up some cool stuff. And I hope fans are really enjoying this. And I hope, hopefully, if you're wondering about the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward, don't worry, it's going to be fantastic as long as this level of quality is being produced and stuff like that. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. So keep following along with us. We're going to be doing a podcast for each episode of Loki. They might be shorter, they might be longer. They'll be as long as they need to be. But this podcast has been super helpful for me. I got a lot out of this, tying things together that I never would have been able to do without you.
Yeah, and again, it's all mostly what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of potential.
Right.
Like they might not follow up on any of this stuff, but they probably will. Like the Scarlet Witch connections to this, and especially with how well received WandaVision is, and especially how much people love that series, the connections are just too beautiful not to tie together. Right. Like everybody's going to go see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse now because it's connected to two TV series that are really good. So like Marvel knows what they're doing. Like they know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing a really good job. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Oh, and don't forget, there's rumors that Spider-Man No Way Home is also going to tie into the multiverse as well. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, keep hearing that rumor. I mean, I guess based on what you've said in this podcast about this first episode of Loki, maybe makes me think that's more likely to happen than I've ever thought before. I always kind of thought people were going off the deep end with all that.
People want it to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. I have a lot to say about Spider-Man, but we'll just have to wait for that when we get to those Spider-Man episodes of the podcast. Right. I have a lot to say about that, but we'll have to just wait. I can't talk about everything.
That's right.
Even though I probably could. All right. Well, I think we're done. Right?
I think we're done. So in between now and next week, just follow us, subscribe to us, rate and review, tell your friends.
Send us questions over Twitter. Please. I would love, or different things I don't know. Like I would love to have more of a conversation about things that I don't completely know about. I would love that.
Yeah, definitely. We're at Super Sideshow on Twitter. Hit us up, or you can catch the podcasts everywhere podcasts are found. You can also catch it on YouTube. We'll see you next time for another episode of Loki.
See you guys. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Mike.